So good evening. My name is Laura Arneson, and I am happy to be here this evening with you. So my talk this evening is called Tapping into Your Potential. And the steps or some of the spiritual practices that you can use in your life in order to do that. So one of the first ones is to look beyond appearances. The second one is to be in a place of non-judgment. And the third one is to spend time in meditation and stillness and in nature. So there's a young man by the name of Mickey Tussler, and he lived on a farm in the Midwest with his parents. And one day, a young baseball manager happened to have his car break down near their farm, and he needed to go up to the farm and ask to use the phone to call a tow truck. And while he was doing that, he noticed that Mickey, who had a little friend pig named Chester, was throwing apples into this round bucket. And as he would throw the apples into the round bucket, the pigs would eat the apples underneath. And this young baseball manager was just amazed at the arm that this young man had. He was just in awe of how he could throw these apples. And he said to the parents, "Do you realize what your son is doing?" And the parents were oblivious to that. And the manager wanted Mickey he said, "I am a manager of a minor league baseball team, and I would love to have your son come try out and work with our team." And the parents were very hesitant because they said, "Well, our son is kind of different. He's special." And, he said, well, that doesn't matter. It's okay. And so it turned out that Mickey was autistic. And the parents were very hesitant to allow him to go try out with the baseball team because they didn't know if he could handle it. And they were concerned about his safety and his welfare. And they were afraid of the world. They had a view of the world that was not a very safe place. And of course, they loved their son and they wanted him to be safe. And so finally, they let him go. And Mickey, in this process, blossomed. He had some struggles being around all the noise and the people in the stadiums, but he came to have a group of friends with this team. And he taught these people about to have compassion for his experience. And so what this story tells us is that beyond the appearance of whatever we might think could be limiting in somebody, there is potential. There was a potential in this young man to be a wonderful baseball player, pitcher, and a wonderful friend, and a part of a team. And not only did this heal him in a way, it healed all of those around him, and it healed his family, it healed his parents, because they learned to see that the world was a safe place that their son could be in, that they didn't have to hide him away on their farm to keep him safe. So the definition of potential is latent qualities or abilities that may be developed and lead to future success or usefulness and the inherent ability or capacity for growth, development, or coming into being. And so there was that capacity within Mickey for growth, even though he had this disability that in some ways limited him. And so we have all heard the analogy of the acorn that grows into the great oak tree. And this great oak tree starts out as this tiny seed. And within that seed, there is the potential for it to be this magnificent tree. And yet that potential is not anything that we can really see. It is an invisible force within the life of that seed. And there are many things that have to go into allowing that seed to grow into its magnificence. It needs the proper soil and nutrients and water and sun, and it needs the right climate, and it also needs a period of time. It's not going to grow from the seed to the great oak tree overnight. It's going to take years and years. And so at any point along the way, we might see that oak tree and think, oh, it's reached its potential. But we could come back several years later, 10 years later, and see that it had reached even a higher potential. So we have to be willing to continue to expand our mind and our ideas about what potential means, and also not to put our perceptions upon people about where they are or things about where they are as a judgment, assuming that they're not where they should be, that they aren't reaching a new potential within themselves already, even beyond the appearances of what we see. So within every child, there is the potential of becoming an adult. There is that inherent quality within us that grows us into an adult human being. And there are those things that need to come from the outside also. There's the nurturing from the parents, the love, the basic physical needs of shelter and food and water and clothing. And all of these things come together on all the different levels that a child needs to grow into a productive adult. And so at times it can seem like, well then, why do we have trouble, and why do we get stuck? Why do we reach these places where it seems like we don't have what we want? And I think that those places where we come to a place where there's something that's not working in our life, perhaps there's a relationship that's not working, or a job that's not providing us with enough income, or there are other relationships in our workplace that we're struggling with, or maybe the way that we're feeling about ourselves. There's all sorts of things. And rather than looking at those things as wrong, I think that they are those opportunities for us to step into that next greater potential of who we already are. They are calling us to reach for those latent talents and abilities that are already inherent with us, because we are one with God. And so there is no limitation in who we are. So Deepak Chopra, in his book, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, talks about the first spiritual law being the law of pure potentiality. And this law is everywhere present. It is that field of consciousness. And it is that awareness that we are one with this field of consciousness, that this is who we are. And so he talks about the ways that you can tap into this true nature of the universe, the true nature of God. And that first way is through non-judgment, and through not judging the appearances of what we see or think that a place that people should be in. Oftentimes, I think that potential is this ineffable quality is something that we have to be careful not to define it according to our perceptions of life and our values and our beliefs, because everybody is going to have their own potential or own desire of what they want to be or who they are here to be through that intention of spirit acting through them individualized, and we have no idea what that is. So we have to be careful not to place our judgments and our perceptions on what their potential is, and allow them to grow into their potential without attachment to it, because truly that's between their soul and spirit. And so there is, I just lost my whole train of thought. I recently went to see a performance in Reno, where I live, of a group of children called the African Children's Choir. And They were these young children from the ages of 9 to 12, and they tour the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada singing to audiences. And they are from the ages from 9 to 12. And the purpose of them doing this is to raise money to provide them with housing and to raise them in the orphanages that they live in, and also to provide them with education. And in 1984, Ray Barnett, he was a human rights activist, and he traveled to Uganda to see if he couldn't help assist with a group of other people, these young children who had been displaced and orphaned in the civil war that was taking place there. And so there were thousands of children that were desperate for food and water and care, that couldn't take care of themselves. And he knew that he had to look beyond and find a different solution than ever before for these children, because the answer was not appearing to be there. And it was going to take more than just bringing a little food in. It was just such a big problem. So he and the people he was working with knew that they had to come up with a new solution. So while they were watching these children in the street, they saw one little boy singing, and he was dancing and singing away, and he had this wonderful vitality and joy in his singing, even though all of this desperation was around him. And so the idea came to Ray to have the children form choirs that would go around and tour to raise money and raise donations for them. And so to this date, there are over 1,000 children that have been a part of the choirs and have been schooled all the way through college. And it was so fun to see these kids stand up on stage and say, you know, my name is Alicia, and I want to be an astronaut. My name is Bobby, and I want to be a lawyer. My name is Susie, and I want to be a doctor or a midwife. One girl said she wanted to be a prime minister. Some wanted to be a politician. And they have this fabulous hope that that will really happen, because there are these people that believe in them and are seeing the potential in them and placing that faith in the ability to get them to that point. So not only are they changing the lives of the individual children, they are changing the lives of communities and really the lives of all people in Africa. And it has spread to 7 countries within Africa. And so this is just another way that we can see that we have to look beyond the appearances and not judge what the surface is, to that greater truth that lies within all of human nature, within all humans, to the possibility of what's there for them. So Albert Einstein says, no problem can be solved from the level of consciousness that it is created from. And so when we enter that place of stillness, that place of meditation, we open our consciousness to that infinite potential of the universe that is unbounded, that knows no limitation, that knows no boundary. And it is in this place when we feel like we are up against a wall where there's no answer, where we get to surrender into that silence and allow ourselves to be touched by that greater truth so that something new can come forward. And isn't this what, I don't know if Ray meditated, but he obviously had that vision that something greater could come forward, and he was open to that inspiration of spirit. And so when we spend time in a regular practice of meditation and stillness, then we come to know that presence. When we court the divine, then we come to know that presence, and we are able to bring it into our lives when we have situations where we feel like there's not an answer, where there's not a way out, where it doesn't seem like there's anything possible that could change a situation that is happening. And then we allow that infinite potential of the universe to show us the way, because really God is the way. So I love it when I see instances of science and spirituality coming together. And Deepak Chopra, of course, says that meditation and contemplating nature and non-judgment are the ways to tap into this potential. And there's a research on the brain that is showing how adaptable our brains are and how they are constantly changing and how powerful our thoughts are. And as in Science of Mind, we know this, and yet it's so wonderful to see science proving this. And it's called neuroplasticity, neuro being the cells in our brains and plasticity being changeable and malleable or modifiable, and that the architecture of our brains are always changing. And that how you work with your brain, how you nourish it, how you exercise your body and move your body, how the ideas you feed your brain, the therapy you give your brain, the spiritual and mental and emotional practices that you input into your brain radically affect your brain. Now, isn't that just wonderful to hear? And so, through contemplative neuroscience, which is a fancy way for saying meditation, they have shown through MRIs that brains are actually changed through meditation, that they become built up in people that meditate on a regular basis, that the synapses are built up, that people are able to better focus, and the insula becomes thicker, which helps people to become more aware and more empathetic. So isn't that wonderful news? So I love that in this book by Norman Doidge, which is called The Brain That Changes Itself, that and which is a recent book of like 2010, and a book that Deepak Chopra wrote probably 20 years ago, that they are saying the same thing and they are meeting, and that science and spirituality truly is coming together just as Ernest Holmes always said that it must. And so with these practices of non-judgment, of looking past appearances, of taking time in the silence and being in nature to contemplate the divine, we open ourselves to that pure potential, which is the truth of who we are. We are here as the expression of the divine. And to know that this potential is not about what we have, it's about who we are. It's about who we are being in this lifetime, who we are being as the expression of love, as the expression of joy, as the expression of beauty in our lives, and that is what we're here to be and who we are to express. Thank you. I just went, big sigh. For the most part, it felt really good. I don't know what happened there for a minute. It was just like my mind just went like blank. So I just let the first thing that come in that was I had prepared come through. So I don't know if it was really